They didn't think I'd say anything. They were wrong. I was standing in the back of the boardroom, arms crossed, jaw clenched, watching 6 months of my work being butchered by a bunch of people who barely knew how the system functioned. This was the Palomar contract, a $6.2 million logistics overhaul for one of the biggest warehousing networks in the Midwest. My system, my work. But you wouldn't know that if you looked at the presentation. Rick Hanley, my boss, was soaking in the praise like a damn sponge, nodding thoughtfully, making hand gestures like he even understood what predictive freight bundling meant. I watched him smile like he'd written every line of that proposal himself. I wanted to walk up to the screen and rip the slides out of the projector. My name is Jackson Reeve. I'm 42. I live in Dayton, Ohio, and until that moment, I was the lead systems analyst at Allstork Solutions, at least in title. In practice, I'd become the guy who did all the heavy lifting while Rick made sure his calendar was clear for golf and networking lunches. Nobody wanted the Palomar job when it first came down. Too technical, too messy, too likely to blow up in someone's face. So Rick tossed it at me during a Thursday huddle like it was garbage. "Reeve, this feels like your kind of thing," he said, flipping the folder across the table without even making eye contact. That was back in January. By March, I was working 12-hour days. By April, I'd lost my girlfriend. By May, I'd been coughing blood and landed myself in urgent care with bronchitis. But I kept going. I built that logistics platform from scratch, hooked into Palomar's outdated API, found every bottleneck in their warehouse dispatching, and rewrote the core allocation logic so their trucks wouldn't sit idle for hours every night. I didn't just do the job. I cracked it wide open and rebuilt it better than anyone thought possible. And now, 6 months later, I stood in the back of this overpriced glass box while Rick took credit for all of it. The presentation was riddled with buzzwords, slides cluttered with animations no client actually wanted. And when Rick started walking through the system capabilities, I could barely keep myself from laughing. He didn't even know what half of them meant. Then, Nick from sales chimed in, his voice all confident and rehearsed, explaining how the system would dynamically respond to weather patterns. That was my code, my late-night idea from February, scribbled onto a whiteboard, while I coughed my lungs out and ate vending machine crackers for dinner. He called it teamwork, said we'd collectively brainstormed the logic. Bullshit. Rachel from marketing was up next, talking about frontline implementation strategy. I don't even know if she'd seen the actual platform before today. But there she was, confidently describing how Allstorks would handle the rollout. My name wasn't on a single slide, not one. And still, I waited. I watched, I kept my mouth shut. Until the Palomar CIO asked about our failure tolerance model, and Nick stumbled, and Rick tried to dance around the question with a joke about industrial resilience. And then the COO, June Lee, leaned forward and asked, "What about rerouting under severe storm alerts? How does the logic prioritize when two distribution hubs are simultaneously impacted?" Silence. Rick blinked. Nick glanced at his notes. Rachel looked at the floor. And from the back of the room, I said, loud enough for the mic to pick it up, "It uses NoAA's 5-day forecast API, cross-checked against historical delay averages and proximity redundancy scores. If there's a predicted storm within range, the system shifts priority to the next qualified hub with a 3-hour warning buffer." Everyone turned. June narrowed her eyes. "And you are?" Before I could speak, Rick said, "Oh, that's Jackson. He helped with some of the back end." Helped. I felt heat rise in my neck. That's when I stepped forward. I looked June Lee in the eye and said, "Actually, I built the entire back end, and the front end logic, and the deployment structure. There wasn't a team, it was me, and I can walk you through every single line." June's lips curled into the faintest smile. She looked at Rick, then back at me. "Good," she said. "Then let's go through it now. Live right here." Rick's face turned a shade I hadn't seen before, something between beet red and panic gray. This wasn't how the meeting was supposed to go, but it was how mine would begin. I went into Rick's office the next morning, thinking I could still fix it. It started with little things. Nick from sales, who normally wouldn't know a JSON key from a coffee stirrer, started popping into my cubicle asking questions like, Hey man, how does the weight distribution matrix recalculate when a late load comes in from Indiana? Like he cared. Like he even knew what he was asking. I gave him a vague answer and watched his eyes glaze over halfway through. Then Rachel from marketing, who once called a barcode scanner a logistics wand, pulled me into a conference room one afternoon to quickly review the rollout plan. The rollout plan she had nothing to do with. She sat there flipping through a binder of screenshots and talking like she wrote the entire playbook. I bit my tongue so hard it felt like I'd chipped a molar. By the third week of this weird shift, I realized what was happening. Strategy meetings were being scheduled, calendar invites flying around. None of them included me. These were Palomar prep sessions, executive briefings, slide deck reviews, and I was being boxed out. I tried brushing it off. Maybe it was just timing. Maybe they thought I was too busy coding to care about the client side. Then came the night I couldn't sleep again. I logged in to check some load time benchmarks, but something caught my eye. A shared drive folder I hadn't noticed before. Palomar Final Presentation Deck. I opened it. 47 slides. I scrolled through it slowly. At first, I was just scanning, half expecting the usual shallow graphs and buzzwords. But then I started seeing my work, my diagrams, my logic models, the custom KPIs I'd invented from scratch. Slide 12, Predictive Rerouting Engine, described in detail, line for line. Slide 17, Workflow Automation Triggers, my flowchart. Slide 23, System Cost Savings Estimate, lifted directly from a spreadsheet I'd built. Slide 31, Architecture Overview, including a rendering I'd made using Lucidchart at 2 a.m. one Saturday in February, and then I hit the team slide. There it was. Rick Hanley, lead architect Nick Stanton, solutions presenter, core functions, Rachel Park, implementation, strategy. Me, nowhere, not even a mention. No technical advisor, no platform lead, not even special thanks. I just stared at the screen. My mouse hand froze. Something behind my eyes tightened. The kind of slow, burning ache that doesn't come from stress, but from something deeper. Betrayal, humiliation, rage. I shut the laptop, but I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I walked into the office with a fresh shirt, a coffee I didn't touch, and a plan to fix this before it went any further. Rick's door was open. He was typing something with one hand, cradling his phone with the other, grinning like he'd just landed a book deal. I knocked once. He looked up. "Jackson," he said, all warmth and fake casual tone. "Got a minute?" "I do," I said. "We need to talk." He gestured to the chair across from him and leaned back like he was doing me a favor. I didn't waste time. I saw the deck. He paused just a hair too long. "What deck?" "The Palomar one." "Oh, right, that." He made a show of adjusting his keyboard. "Yeah, marketing pulled that together from everyone's inputs." "No," I said firmly. "It's my work, all of it. Every performance gain, every integration model, every predictive tool. That's me." Rick nodded slowly, like he was waiting for me to finish a tantrum. "Listen," he said. "You've done great work, Jackson. Really solid stuff. But you know how this game works." I just stared at him. He sighed. "Look, you're not client-facing, you're back-end. You're a systems guy. Technical, sharp, but not polished." "Polished?" I repeated. "Yeah. You're not really the type we put in front of executives. You get flustered. You talk in code. You don't read the room. So you're saying I'm too smart for the room?" He smirked like he thought I was joking. "No, I'm saying you're not built for the spotlight. And that's fine. Every orchestra needs someone in the pit, right?" I clenched my hands together in my lap so I wouldn't slam them into the table. "You listed yourself as lead architect," I said, voice low, "because that's what execs expect. They want to see leadership. Continuity. A title they recognize. Come on, Jackson, you know how this works." I sat there for a second, feeling something settle in my chest. Not anger, not anymore, just clarity. He leaned in. "You keep doing what you do best. Code. Solve problems. Leave the stage work to us." I stood up. No nod, no handshake. As I walked out, Rick called after me. "We're all on the same team, Jackson." I didn't turn around, because in that moment, I knew we weren't. That's when I stepped forward and told her the truth. The Palomar presentation was set for Tuesday morning, and I hadn't slept since Saturday. Not because I was prepping. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even looped in on the rehearsal. I found out the date from a Slack thread Rachel posted in the wrong channel. By then, I'd stopped trying to talk to Rick. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table I'd built. I just showed up. I wore a clean button-down, no tie, sat in the back of the glass conference room like a ghost in my own story. The Palomar team filed in slowly. 3 execs, 2 senior tech leads, 1 woman in a Navy pantsuit who moved like she owned the building. That was June Lee, COO. Rick greeted her like they were best friends. Too much smiling, too much shoulder tapping. He introduced Nick as the solutions lead and Rachel as implementation strategy. I wasn't introduced at all. The presentation started. Nick kicked things off. His tone was breezy, like he was giving a TED Talk on freight logistics. He said things like, "We created a proprietary decision matrix, and our platform uses AI-adjacent tools to streamline output." None of it made sense. Rachel went next, talking about cross-departmental onboarding and change readiness protocols. I sat there grinding my molars, counting how many of my diagrams were still in the deck. 8, maybe 9. Rick nodded and smiled like a man running for office. He said, "Let's talk through the technical layer now," and motioned to Nick, who looked down at his tablet like he'd forgotten what planet we were on. That's when it happened. June leaned forward, fingers laced together. "Can you walk us through the weather-based rerouting logic?" she asked. Calm voice. Razor edge. Nick froze. He blinked once. "Sure. So the rerouting is, it's built on conditions, like system alerts." "Conditions from where?" June asked. "What data source are you using?" Rick jumped in, laughing like they were all old friends. "We aggregate from multiple APIs. It's all pretty seamless." June didn't smile. "Which APIs? And how are you accounting for regional microclimate disruptions?" Silence. Rachel looked at her notes, but her page was blank. Nick cleared his throat and started to say something about Google Maps before he just stopped. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Nobody was going to answer. Not correctly. And this was the one thing I knew better than anything. It was my logic. I had built it, tested it, broken it, and built it again. So, I spoke. From the back of the room, I said clearly, "We pull from Noe's 5-day forecast API, cross-reference that against Palomar's historical delay logs, and apply a rerouting score based on proximity coverage and storm probability. The system reprioritizes regional hubs with a 3-hour buffer when the storm zone prediction crosses a certain threshold." Everyone turned, Rick's face drained. He looked like he'd swallowed a box of nails. June's eyes found mine. "And you are?" Before I could answer, Rick beat me to it. "Oh, that's Jackson," he said, waving a hand like I was the IT guy from down the hall. "He helped with some of the back-end stuff." Helped. The word landed in the room like a bad smell. I took a slow step forward and let the silence settle. Then I looked at June and said, "I built the back end, and the front end, and the data logic. There wasn't a team, just me." June didn't blink. "I see," she said. She looked at Rick, then back at me. "Would you mind walking us through the system, end to end, right now?" It wasn't a request, it was a test. I nodded once. Of course. Rick didn't say a word. He just stepped back, like the stage had been pulled out from under him. I walked to the screen, opened the admin dashboard from my laptop, and pulled up the live demo. And then, in front of the Palomar executives and the entire Allstorks presentation team, I told the truth, every line of it. That night, I drafted my terms. I walked them through the entire system, live, on screen, in front of everyone. I didn't look at Rick, not once. I ignored the tightness in my chest and the sweat climbing my collar. I just focused on what I knew, the structure, the logic, the moving pieces that only I could explain. "This is the system-level dashboard," I said, clicking into the admin panel. It pulls live data from Palomar's current inventory via secured API bridge, calculates optimal load configurations by cost per mile, then distributes those across available carriers based on a rolling, weight-adjusted priority matrix. June watched with her arms crossed, stone-faced. The Palomar CFO, a tall guy in tortoiseshell glasses, leaned forward in his seat. Rick didn't say a word. His mouth was slightly open, his arms limp at his sides like someone had pulled the batteries out of him. I kept going. This module handles failure fallback. We have custom rule sets per region, so if a lane gets shut down, storm, accident, whatever, it'll reroute based on 3 variables: speed of recovery, partner cost, and historical completion rates. Nick shifted in his seat. Rachel stared at the screen like she was seeing it for the first time. I pulled up the alert simulator, ran a mock forecast, and let them see how the system pivoted routes in real time. The table of cost savings populated beneath it. Initial projections estimated 21% savings on overnight fulfillment. We're trending closer to 28, weekends even higher. The room went quiet. June nodded slowly. "And you built all of this?" "Yes," I said, plain and steady. "Every line?" Rick cleared his throat behind me. "Of course, it was a group effort." "No, it wasn't," I said, turning slightly, just enough to let him know I wasn't letting him take oxygen from the room. "I wrote the code, I solved the model gaps, I built the live environment. What you're seeing, this whole platform, it's mine." Silence. The CFO looked at June. She looked at me. "Thank you, Jackson," she said, her voice clipped but respectful. "That was excellent." The meeting wrapped 10 minutes later. I packed up my laptop and headed toward the elevator, ready to disappear before Rick cornered me with fake compliments and clenched teeth. But before I got there, June called out, "Mr. Reeve." I turned. She was standing just outside the conference room with the CFO. She didn't smile, she just gestured for me to follow. We ducked into an empty office. "First of all," she said, "thank you for stepping in. That platform's the only reason we didn't walk out." I nodded. "I appreciate that." Her tone shifted. "All business now? Who's signing off on the tech specs?" I hesitated. "Probably Rick. He's the project lead on paper." June scoffed. "Not good enough. I'm not putting my name on anything unless the person who built this signs it. That's you, right?" "Yes." "Then it's settled." She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a card. It was matte black, embossed with her name, personal cell listed underneath. "If you get any pushback, call me directly." I took it, my fingers shaking just a little as I slid it into my jacket pocket. We shook hands. Her grip was firm. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by empty takeout boxes and an untouched beer on the counter. I opened a blank document on my laptop and typed at the top, "Palomar Project, conditions for signature." I kept it short. Lead architect credit on all documents, lead on implementation team, 8% raise, final sign-off power on all tech deliverables. I stared at the list for a long time. It wasn't even that much, not compared to what I'd already given. Then I attached the list to an email, typed Rick into the address field, and hit send. No emotion, no apology. Just a subject line that read, "Signature contingency." I turned off my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Leverage. You need my name on that paper. Meridian won't move without it. Rick called me into his office around 10:30 a.m. The next morning, I'd barely sipped my coffee. He didn't wait for me to sit. He slammed the door shut behind me and launched right in. "Do you have any idea what kind of position you just put this company in?" I stood there, arms crossed, not rising to the bait. "You mean telling the client the truth?" His face turned red, but he kept his voice low, probably because someone in HR had warned him about glass walls and office gossip. "You completely undercut me in front of Palomar. You hijacked that meeting." I raised an eyebrow. "I answered a question. You couldn't. That wasn't your place. It wasn't yours either. You didn't build it." He scoffed, pacing now. "This isn't about who wrote the damn code. It's about trust, about optics. You made us look disorganized. You made us look like liars." He pointed a finger at me. "You think you're the only one who's ever built something? I've been doing this 20 years. And in 20 years, you still can't answer a question about the platform you supposedly architected." He paused. That stung him. I could tell. "I didn't go around you," I said. "You went around me. I built that system. I documented it. I tested it. I bled for it." He waved me off. You're not a team player. You never were. I reached into my folder and handed him a single printed page. My terms. He looked down, reading quickly. Lead architect credit, lead on implementation, 18% raise. He looked up at me like I'd just confessed to murder. You think you're in a position to demand this? Yes, I said calmly. I am. He laughed, dry and humorless. This is extortion. No, I said. It's leverage. He threw the page on his desk and leaned forward. You think Palomar cares about some back-end analyst? You think they'll tank a deal over a title? I think June Lee gave me her direct number for a reason, I said. And I think she made it very clear who's signing off on the specs. You threatening to kill the deal? No, I said. I'm giving you a path to keep it alive. Rick's jaw clenched. His eyes were darting, calculating, probably realizing that without my signature, that $6.2 million was about to float off into someone else's pipeline. You're a damn risk, he muttered. No, Rick, I said. I'm the reason you still have a project. He stared at me like he wanted to throw something, but all he managed was a bitter smile. You're replaceable, he said quietly. I smiled back. So am I. Let's see who gets replaced first. And with that, I turned and walked out. 3 hours later, HR called. Vanessa from corporate. Her voice was all soft tones and calculated diplomacy. Jackson, we'd like to propose a compromise. I listened. Small print credit, 6% one-time bonus, assistant lead title. Let me stop you there, I said. No. Silence on the line. You sure? She asked finally. Very, I said. You've got until 5. And I hung up. The clock had officially started ticking. I signed and walked out of that office with my spine intact for the first time in years. After that call with HR, I went back to my desk and stared at my screen for a solid 10 minutes without touching the keyboard, not thinking, not working, just sitting there. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the soft clacking of keyboards around me, the occasional laugh from someone in sales. It all felt like noise from another universe. They thought I'd cave. They really thought I'd take their table scraps and be grateful for them. By noon, Vanessa from HR slid into the open space next to my cubicle like she was casually passing through. Jackson, she said, like she was greeting someone at a grocery store. Can we chat? Sure. We walked to one of those little windowless rooms with a round table and uncomfortable chairs that always smell faintly like dry erase markers and burnt coffee. Vanessa sat down, folded her hands like a guidance counselor. I want to make sure you understand the weight of your decision here. I nodded once. I do. This isn't just about you. It's a big contract. A lot of people are counting on it. Palomar is a cornerstone client. If it falls through, it won't, I said, as long as I sign. She pursed her lips. Yes, but if you don't and we can't pivot quickly, you'd be jeopardizing a major opportunity for the company. I'm not the one jeopardizing it, she sighed like a disappointed aunt. You're a valuable employee, Jackson, but there are ways to handle things. I'm handling it professionally, with boundaries. That's what you want, right? There was a beat of silence. Jackson, she said gently, don't throw your future away because of a personal disagreement. It's not personal, I said, looking her dead in the eye. It's professional, and I'm done being professionally erased. She blinked. We just want to avoid escalation. Then meet my terms, I said. You have until 5. I stood up and walked out. I spent the next few hours pretending to work, answering a few Slack pings, making a half-hearted comment on someone's Jira ticket, but my heart wasn't in it. I was vibrating with nerves, anger, exhaustion, and underneath it all, something else I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. Around 3 p.m., I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and sat down on the closed lid. That's when it hit me, the weight of it. My hands were shaking, my throat was tight, and all of a sudden, I couldn't catch my breath. I buried my face in my hands. 6 months. All the nights I stayed late, the weekends I skipped, the way I let my relationship crumble, the missed calls from friends, the ache in my chest from bronchitis and caffeine and stress. All of it, because I believed in this one damn thing, and they were going to bury me under it. I let myself fall apart for 10 minutes. Then I stood up, washed my face, and went back to my desk. At 4:52 p.m., Vanessa appeared again. No knock, no Slack message, just her voice over the cubicle wall. "Jackson?" I turned around. She stepped closer, folder in hand. Her expression was tight, almost unreadable, but her eyes gave it away. "We'll give you the title," she said. "You'll lead the implementation team." I didn't say anything. The raise is 15%. Not 18, but better than what was offered before. Still quiet. "And the credit. Lead architect. It'll appear on all official documentation going forward." I nodded. "Deal." She handed me the updated contract. I signed it without hesitation, and when I handed it back, something inside me clicked into place. Not relief exactly, not victory either, just solidity. Like my spine had finally finished welding itself together. I packed up my bag for the night, walked out of that office, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Rick didn't come after me, didn't rage or explode or try to clear the air. He didn't say a word, but the look on his face the next morning, when my name showed up on that title page, said everything. He wasn't going to fight me. He was going to freeze me out. She offered me something I'd never had: authority. The ink had barely dried on the new contract when the silence started. Rick didn't say a word to me that first week. Not in meetings, not in the break room, not in passing by the elevator. He didn't even make eye contact. If he needed something, it came through Slack. Usually at weird hours, often without punctuation. "Need weekly status report on Palomar devs by 8 a.m. tomorrow." No greeting, no sign-off, just command. I replied in full sentences. Always polite, always professional. I wasn't about to play his game, but he made it clear. I was on an island now. Tasks came to me late, deadlines came fast. One night, a ping lit up my phone at 1:04 a.m. "Can you rerun the load test for Site B? Metrics look off." He didn't even ask if I was awake. And the next morning, when I delivered the full report before he was out of bed, he said nothing, not even a thumbs up emoji, just assigned me something else, longer, harder, more draining. But I didn't flinch. Because every deliverable, every piece of documentation, every damn PDF now had my name printed right at the top: Lead Architect Jackson Reeve. It was a silent war, and I was winning. Instead of isolating, I built. I brought in 2 junior devs who had been collecting dust in the analytics department. Samir and Colin, both sharp, both underutilized. Rick had ignored them for years. I gave them responsibility, ownership, credit. They thrived. By the second month, they were writing modules I'd once been afraid to hand off. By the third, they were managing their own rollout timelines. And every Friday afternoon, June Lee checked in. Sometimes it was just a 2-line email. Status? On track, updated report attached. Sometimes she called, just to hear how things were running, just to say thank you in that calm, deliberate tone of hers. She never once asked to speak to Rick. By mid-quarter, Palomar was ahead of schedule, and for the first time in a long time, so was I. That's when June asked me to grab coffee. We met at a cafe near her office. Real place, no corporate logos. She showed up 5 minutes early, no assistant, no fanfare. Just a simple, "Glad you came." I nodded. "System stable, final integrations coming next week." "I know," she said, stirring her coffee. "I trust you." Those 3 words hit harder than I expected. Then she looked me dead in the eye. "Jackson, you're wasting your time at Allstorks." I didn't say anything. Not yet. "We're building a division at Palomar," she continued, "a real one. Internal ops engineering, lean.smart. Yours, if you want it." I blinked. "Mine?" "Director level, you'd have 12 headcount to start. Salary doubles, equity after 12 months. I stared at her, stunned. "You'll have full control," she added. "I don't need someone who plays the game. I need someone who builds." I exhaled slowly. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. All I could think was, they buried me for 6 months, and now I'm being handed the shovel. "I just have to finish the contract?" I asked. June nodded. "After launch, we're greenlighting it. Clean break." No games. I left the cafe with her card in my pocket, my mind racing and a single thought looping in my head. They froze me out, but she just lit the path forward. Within a month, I'd poached 4 solid people from all Storks. The day the Palomar system went live, I didn't sleep the night before. Not out of anxiety, that part was long gone. It was focus. Every line of code, every integration point, every bit of logic that ran through the veins of that platform had to hum in perfect sync. No hiccups, no excuses. By 9 a.m., it was online. By 9:04, it was routing its first live package from Joliet to St. Paul, with 2 reroute buffers already triggered due to a storm front moving through northern Illinois. Flawless. By noon, Palomar's VP of Ops sent out a company-wide message. Live with All Storks platform. Already seeing returns. Huge credit to Jackson Reeve and team. Incredible work. And then came the cherry on top. At the official launch event later that week, something All Storks insisted on turning into a PR stunt. June stood in front of the room, smiled, and called me to the front. Not Rick, not Nick, not Rachel. Me. She handed me a framed letter, printed on Palomar letterhead, signed by her and the CEO. It praised the platform, sure, but it spent 3 paragraphs naming me specifically. My leadership, my innovation, my contribution. People clapped, Rick barely moved. He sat in the back corner of the room like he'd been nailed there. His smile was frozen, his eyes dead. I don't even think he blinked. I shook June's hand and smiled politely for the cameras. But inside, I was already gone. The next morning, I walked into the office early, 7:30, before the buzz of laptops and coffee mugs. I printed my resignation, signed it, folded it neatly, and walked it straight to HR. No speech, no dramatic goodbye, just paperwork. By noon, I was gone. No farewell email, no donuts in the kitchen, no signed card or hallway applause, just silence, the way Rick wanted it. At Palomar, I started the following Monday. My ID badge was waiting. So was my laptop. So was a corner office overlooking the city and a welcome kit with my name embroidered on the bag. 12 open headcount. I used 4 of them in the first 30 days. Samir.Colin. Karen from QA, Luis from Backend Dev, all from All Storks, all brilliant, all previously ignored, boxed out, or taken for granted. I made the calls, no sales pitch, no ego, just facts. You know what I'm building, you've seen how I work. If you want in, let's do it. They all said yes, and then more started reaching out. Some quiet, some desperate. People who'd watched me eat glass for a year while they smiled and kept their heads down. Now they wanted out too. It wasn't just revenge, it was revelation. They'd seen the shift. They'd seen someone stand up to the machine and not get crushed. And they realized they didn't have to stay in it either. The exodus had begun. Your silence has been protecting the wrong people. It took less than a year. The department Rick once strutted through like a general commanding a parade collapsed. Quietly at first. Missed deliverables, buggy handoffs, client follow-ups going unanswered. Then it hit loud. All Storks lost the Thermodyne contract. A big one, 7 figures. Went to a competitor. That competitor? They were using the platform I built. Not a clone, not a knockoff. The actual system. Palomar had licensed the stripped-down framework to their supply chain partners, and Thermodyne jumped ship for it. Rick's name wasn't on a single line of the deal. That same quarter, 3 more people left his team. One of them, a solid UX lead named Lexi, emailed me from her personal account with the subject line, "If you're still hiring," I was. I gave her a team of her own within 2 weeks. By the end of Q3, HR at All Storks restructured Rick into an advisory role. No announcement, no cake, just a sudden change in the org chart. His LinkedIn went dark for a while, then a generic update. Excited to focus on strategic initiatives and mentorship. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, I was invited to speak at a logistics innovation summit in Chicago. Keynote slot. Same room that had once ignored me during my All Storks years. I stood on stage in front of 300 people, walking them through how we used weather-based triggers to predict reroute needs 6 hours in advance. A breakthrough that cut shipping costs by almost 30% in some regions. The crowd was silent, focused. When I stepped off stage, there was a line of people waiting to talk. Young engineers, startup founders, consultants. And in the back row, near the exit door, was Rick, though older, smaller. He didn't try to wave or say anything, just nodded stiffly. I nodded back. That was all. Later that afternoon, during the mixer, a kid in his 20s came up to me. Badge said, Associate Developer, Melrose Logistics. Eyes wide, fingers fidgeting around his cup. Hi, he said. Sorry. Just wanted to say thank you for your talk. I smiled. Thanks. You working on something similar? He nodded, then swallowed hard. Actually, your story. What you said about getting erased, that's what I'm going through right now. Different company, same thing. I wrote a bunch of the back end that's getting credited to the VP. No one even knows I touched it. I looked him in the eye. What's your name? Tyler. I held out my hand. I'm Jackson. He shook it, nervous. Then he asked the question I didn't realize I'd been waiting to hear all day. How did you start? Like, really start? I thought for a second. Then I said the same thing I'd told myself the day I walked into Rick's office with that list of demands. Your silence has been protecting the wrong people. Tyler blinked, then slowly nodded. I didn't have to say anything else. He got it. 2 years in, my team had grown to 30 plus. We made up 19% of Palomar's entire logistics division. I never meant to build an empire. I just wanted a seat at the table. Now, 2 years later, I had my own floor, my own team, my own budget. And more importantly, my name on everything I touched, not tucked in the margins or buried in the appendix. Right there, front and center. Lead, Jackson Reeve. At Palomar, people didn't treat code like magic. They treated the people who wrote it like professionals. And the system we'd built, it was now powering nearly 1/5 of the entire company's logistics flow. We'd grown fast, not recklessly, just right. Samir ran platform stability now. Colin headed systems diagnostics. Lexi, who once got sidelined doing copy edits on feature docs, had built a new dashboard UI that had execs across 3 departments calling it the best damn tool we've ever seen. And me, I was finally doing what I was built for. Not just coding, but leading, guiding, teaching, making space for people like me to not just survive the corporate game, but win it on their own terms. It wasn't about revenge anymore. That phase had passed. Watching Rick shrink into an advisory role was enough. That nod at the summit, that was the last page in that chapter. This was something different. This was legacy. I'd been invited to speak at a university tech panel, first as a guest, now as a recurring name. Young engineers approached me like I was someone worth listening to, and I never forgot where I came from. When they asked me how to handle being ignored, being erased, being used, I didn't tell them to rage, so I didn't tell them to run. I told them to do what I did. Document everything. Speak clearly, and when the moment comes, do not flinch. Most importantly, I told them the truth that took me too long to learn. You are not the problem. You are the product. And when the product builds itself, it deserves more than a footnote. I kept June's original business card. It sits in my desk drawer, next to the framed letter from the Palomar launch. Not because I need a reminder of what happened. I remember it all. I keep it to remember the moment everything changed. The moment I realized I didn't have to ask for a seat anymore. I could build the damn table. And now, I don't ask. I hire. I don't wait for credit. I give it freely. I don't let good people get buried. Not on my watch. That's the legacy. That's the system I'm building now. Better code, better leadership, better lives. For every Jackson out there still working in the back of the room, your moment's coming, and when it does, speak up. They won't be ready, but you will be.